This week we're talking about Reclaim Blue by Polaroid. I shot a full box of 8 photos, so I wanted to give you a one box review just off of what I thought with Reclaim Blue, and I haven't seen a whole lot of content on it, so I wanted to get this out there to you guys so that way you can kind of get a gist of what it is, and if you're thinking about picking it up, maybe this will swing you one way or the other. So let's talk about Reclaim Blue. Now, before we go too far, I wanted to show you Duochrome versus Reclaim Blue, where Duochrome is actually based in a black and white film chemistry versus Reclaim Blue, which is actually based in a color chemistry. So there is a little bit of a difference there, and I think you'll notice it when you see them kind of side by side. I'll show these images, but there's a whole other video if you want to see the Duochrome stuff. But let's talk about Reclaim Blue. Now, like I said, Reclaim Blue is a 600 speed film, so it's one that is made for cameras that natively shoot it or those that have been converted. So if you have an old box style camera, I think I have one. Hold on. One like this, if you have one of these old guys from the 80s, 90s, if you have one of the newer I-type films, you can use it with that. If you have an SX70, like the old ones, the older than this ones that are converted, you can also use those Reclaim Blue shots with that. It just kind of depends on what you're using, but as long as it will shoot 600 speed film, you're good to go. Now, one of the biggest pros that I found with Reclaim Blue is how easy it is compared to something like Duochrome to expose and to get a fully encompassing image. When it comes to Duochrome, I felt like in the cases that I shot it, even under quote studio kind of quality with lighting and just being able to control everything, if you want to see that video, of course it's going to pop up, but in that case, I thought Duochrome was interesting and it's very niche, but very hard to expose for. And there was a lot of variance in the middle of that between the green and the yellow that I shot. Now, in the case of Reclaim Blue, I shot it in basically broad daylight and I didn't have anything controlled other than the camera itself. And I felt like it did better with exposing. Now, out of the 8 photos that I took, I think 4 of them really exemplify this fact pretty well. Don't hold me to this if it's not absolutely true, but realistically, I shot one box, and it kind of made sense to me when I saw the picture, and then when I shot these, it kind of, again, came up. So I wanted to show them to you and see if you thought the same thing. So here they are really quick. I'm going to show you 2 really light ones and then 2 really dark ones. So if you'll notice the first 2, the really light ones, we lose a lot of that contrast, a lot of that kind of image quality. We don't see a whole lot of detail in the highlights versus the shadows, especially the one where we have the foliage in the building. Basically, on the building itself, you don't see kind of that white brick face or anything like that, but you can definitely tell that there's foliage on the side of the building. I thought that one was really interesting. And then as far as the dark ones, we can see obviously the 2 that are darker, they're underexposed completely, so it's a little hard to make out. But on top of that, the one of the motorcycle taken with just the flash, I think is really interesting because even if it is underexposed, you can still see a lot of detail in it. So for me, those kind of things make Reclaim Blue interesting because it's one that you're losing a lot of your highlights, but you're keeping a lot of your shadows, and usually it's kind of the opposite in a lot of film photos. So I thought it was really interesting, something to mention here for sure. Now, if flexibility and slightly different dynamic range are the pros for a stock like this, there are 2 cons that I think will kind of sway it to make a fully encompassing picture. That way we can kind of talk about the great things and the bad things, and really make it worth your while to determine whether you're going to pick something like this up, especially if you're not a avid instant photographer or just a photographer in general. If you just happen to be the layman at the store and you're going to pick something like this up, these are the things that I think might sway your decision. Now, the 2 cons that I have here are the fact that, one, it is a 600 speed film, so that inevitably will mean that it'll only work in certain situations and it won't be suited for other ones without some sort of modification, purely because it's only 600 speed. There's nothing you can change about that. So in some instances, you might run into a case where it's not fast enough, or other cases where it's too fast, depending on how much light you have in the ambient to determine if this is going to work for you. So just natively know that 600 speed film is, you can't change it. And then on top of that, the box cameras are going to choose for you, anything like that. So you're going to get motion blur in certain cases, or it's going to be blown out if it's not exposed properly. Again, Polaroids in general are hard to expose because you can't really do a lot of adjustments with the cameras natively. So that first is just kind of something to keep in mind when you're talking about using Polaroids in general. Now, in the same vein as having something that is baked in is the actual aesthetic of the image itself. This is a blue image. You will never be able to change that. So unless you're okay with taking 8 photos that look like this or generally look like this, you're going to end up having a little bit of buyer's remorse if you're expecting something different out of it. Now, it kind of makes sense because it is called Reclaim Blue. You know what you're buying, but I just want to make sure that we mention that this is not for every sort of circumstance. This is a very unique aesthetic that I think is going to fit well with certain images and maybe not others. So it might be something for a fun afternoon to try something kind of experimental, but it's probably not something that you want to take to like a big event, like a trip that you've been planning, or like a wedding or something, or a big family event, whatever the thing is. Unless you are really looking for this kind of aesthetic for 8 photos, it may not be something that you want to use all the time. But that's what I have on Reclaim Blue, the newest film stock with a 600 speed straight from Polaroid. I hope you've liked this video. It might be a little bit shorter than usual just because I wanted to get something out on this. Hopefully you've liked it though. Hopefully this kind of makes sense for you. If you haven't seen anything else on Reclaim Blue, make sure to leave me a comment down below letting me know this is kind of the first thing that you saw and that it made you interested in picking it up. I would love to know that this kind of spoke to you. Beyond that, make sure to check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Let me know what you're thinking about there as well. I'll post some of the photos both in those locations. And of course, I will show you, because this has been like the top of the stack, this is the money shot of that kind of film walk, I guess we'll say, that photo walk. So of course, this will be somewhere. If you want to see this in a better kind of avenue, or you want to just see the photo itself, go check me out on there as well. But beyond that, I want to say thank you so much for checking this one out. I will hit you with the typical peace out, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.